COVID field trip policy is the first thing on the agenda.
It is. My proposal would be that maybe we start with the facilities. That's part of the proposal because that's kind of the bigger kind of chunk.
I know, but
okay.
Education policy.
We do, yeah. Well, actually, both of those are the high leverage pieces. So
Yeah.
even, but we have sample policies for the dedication that we could maybe make short work of with kind of a process. So there were a bunch of different sample policies sent, and I thought I had them all complete, but if there's I know I missed the page that had the,
So the reason I was hoping the field trip would be first
Yep.
is because it impacts students and
Yep.
families and money. And I think we need to
Okay.
give a pretty quick response to the family, to the people organizing the field trip so that they
Okay.
know one way or another.
that's
But
fine.
I also missed the field trips. I mean, I'm sorry, the naming, the facilities dedication meeting. So I don't understand the urgency
Got it.
with that. Is there?
I don't think, there was a proposal that came up before the board
Yeah,
for the athletics.
yeah.
And,
I mean, the soccer field
For the soccer,
and
the gym,
the gym.
Yeah,
but I don't think there's any, I think because we don't have a policy, I think we need to just pull back a little bit on that. I mean, I think we need.
so is there a timeline commitment?
So they have an urgency, I think,
They.
what's the name of the group?
Edwin O. Smith Foundation?
Oh, the
Foundation.
E.O. Smith Foundation. They have a pretty aggressive timeline. I think they feel as though it's timely. I'm happy to start with the COVID piece.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we don't have a ton of information, but I would share everything that we do have.
Okay,
And then we can, that actually might be the shorter of the two.
okay.
Yeah,
On
I think so
conversations,
too.
and I'm
That's
good
what
with
I think,
that.
because it just pretty much, I think I'd like to finish the other piece.
So a couple of things. I reached out to Shipman and Goodwin to see what policies, if they had any field trip, COVID field trip related policies.
Yeah.
They do not
Okay,
at this time. I surveyed the superintendents in the URSA group that I am in and got some feedback from them in regards to what they have on hand. One had some specific information, and then I got information today from Dan Uriano that Glastonbury has actually made a statement in regards to it. So I emailed Dr. Bookman in Glastonbury and he responded. They don't have a formal policy,
okay,
but the board did agree on how they were going to manage field trips. So
okay,
that can be a part of our conversation around, how do we want to move forward with at least having some guidelines for how we want to handle it. When we were, what was decided at the last board meeting and voted on by this board at the last board meeting is pretty much in alignment. Is in alignment with, I think, with what both Tolland and Glastonbury are doing. So with that said, Sarah and Deborah do not have this document, so I am going to read it.
Thank you.
This is from Tolland, from Walt Willett, who replied, he replied so quickly, and I appreciated it so much.
That's why.
He said, for trips longer than 72 hours, the typically used range for COVID test reliability, a vaccine is required. For trips shorter than that, vaccination or a negative PCR test within 24 hours of leaving is accepted. The test results must cover the duration of the trip. The idea is if there is an infection starting at the viral load, the idea is that if there is an infection starting, the viral load would be low enough during the duration of the trip to avoid high levels of infection. This is where they are right now. So that is Tolland. I did hear from Coventry, Sterling, Bolton, Stafford, Killingly, and Wyndham. They do not have policies, and many of them are not considering field trips, overnight field trips at this time. The next email was, from Alan Bookman in Glastonbury, who he sent out a message. That's what I included in my packet. He had sent out a message to parents and guardians that stated that the expectation for the school district was that students participating in a school out-of-state trip should be fully vaccinated for COVID-19. Out-of-state travel includes any school-sponsored trips taken by classes, athletic teams, clubs, etc. They've deemed that necessary due to the close proximity of students to one another and to students from other districts that come with travel, participating in large group events and tournaments and overnight lodging. The protocol helps prevent COVID-19 infections, breakthrough cases in the student body, and in rare special circumstances, they've made exceptions to the practice when parents kept their children socially distant during the trip by providing alternate transportation and accommodations when large group activities were not involved. And then went on to talk about the Pfizer vaccine being available to students 12 years and older, and gave the time frame for when you would be considered fully vaccinated and suggested that they plan accordingly. The other piece that did come, although not a policy from Shipman and Goodwin, was just some guidance. And that's the last page in the last 2 pages in that part of the packet. So kind of the gist of it is, if the overnight trip is extracurricular, optional, and voluntary, we have more leeway in placing conditions on participation than it would be on required school activities, provided that we allow for medical and religious exemptions to a COVID-19 vaccination requirement. So that might be something that we have to talk about. If we decide that we're going to be requiring vaccines, what will be the protocol should students ask for a medical or religious exemption to the COVID-19 vaccine? She stated some case law in regards to things that are close to this, but there's not a lot of case law specifically related to these kinds of situations. So part of the concern that she stated was here requiring COVID-19 vaccination is more invasive and involves greater privacy interests than other measures and protocols that promote health and safety and mitigate against COVID-19 transmission and infection, e.g. wearing masks, providing proof of a negative COVID-19 test prior to the trip, etc. However, as noted in the CDC's guidance for COVID-19 and prevention in K-12 schools, vaccination is the leading public health prevention strategy to end the COVID-19 pandemic. Promoting vaccination can help schools safely return to in-person learning, as well as extracurricular activities and sports. She also quoted the State Department of Education and the State Department of Public Health offering the following: COVID-19 vaccination will be an extremely important tool to ensure that athletic programs and other extracurricular activities can continue to perform during the upcoming school year. Athletic directors, coaches, faculty advisors, families, and school administrators should consider specific sport and other activity-related risks for people who are not fully vaccinated and may wish to consider limiting participation in certain activities to those who are fully vaccinated based on particular risk factors associated with the activity. They've also provided this recommendation from SDE and DPA provides additional support for requiring vaccination at a voluntary extracurricular event, especially one involving overnight travel and accommodations during the pandemic, provided that the district allows for medical and religious exemptions. So her summary is, this is a novel issue and there is no case law directly on point. On balance, we believe there may be a strong argument, depending on the particular circumstances of the overnight trip, that requiring COVID-19 vaccination in order to participate in a voluntary optional extracurricular overnight trip is reasonable in light of the considerations above, and as long as the district provides for medical and religious exemptions to the requirement.
Yeah, I mean, I think that states it perfectly right there.
So yeah, it's again, because there's no case law, it's really difficult, I think, for them to say, for sure, but I think that she provided a strong support, and I think that in the initial decision that the board made at the meeting last week.
And I mean, it is voluntary, it's optional to go to Disney, we're not requiring any player to go, so because of that, I think that we can require vaccination and allow religious or medical exemption.
So if they have a religious or medical exemption, they have to have a negative PCR test then? Okay, well, okay.
And I
Well, the
think-
one school was saying if they aren't vaccinated, then they have separate accommodations,
And separate,
transportation.
transportation. So it sounded like in Tollins that he was more talking about, more local,
Yes.
field, either
Yeah,
field
right,
trips
right.
or overnight trips,
Right.
because it sounded like parents were transporting their own kids.
So we would require this of players, coaches, and any chaperones in an official capacity. So that's the one piece which I actually think is the easier of the issues. The other one is what happens in the event where a student has to quarantine.
Yes.
So,
So I spoke with Darcy.
Yeah.
About that.
Yeah.
And she was looking for the information, and I don't have it yet. But I just talked with Dan about it today as well. In the days of H1N1, they had specific protocols in place and communication to parents that should the child become sick on the trip, it was the parent's responsibility to retrieve the student. So that, and he also has, he talked to me today, we have a nurse who is on board to go.
oh, really?
Yeah,
As a chaperone?
as, right, as a chaperone, which is awesome,
Yeah.
really very helpful.
So transport the student, but this is different because the student should not travel if they're positive, right? So
The parent would have
has
to
to
come.
assume the liability of getting their child and staying the required quarantine time with them at
Or
their own
driving.
expense, wherever they are.
Mhm.
So we need parents to sign off
Yeah.
on that.
Right, so there's gonna have to be,
Yeah.
there'll have to be a form, so we'll have to take that H1N form, H1N1 form and doctor it, I think, to
Yeah.
accommodate the fact that the parent would have to get themselves there. They'd have to know ahead of time that they would have to be prepared
Right.
Right.
to get themselves there
Right.
and then to stay for the duration of the
I
quarantine.
mean, that could happen to anybody, the kid could just get,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it
because
could,
even if they're,
even if you're fully vaccinated, it could, I mean, we
Right.
all know that's the risk you're taking, but that's the risk you're taking. The kid could get, have a broken leg, I mean, I don't know.
so that brings another question though, when they're down there, do they have to, like, who decides they need to get tested at what point? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
That's why you have the nurse there.
right, but
Yeah,
if,
but I
if a
agree, yeah,
kid has
yeah,
a
yeah.
fever, then the whole team gets tested and now you find out?
so it's so interesting, so if, we'll know the vaccination status of the individuals who are there.
Yeah.
If a student gets sick, I think, the way that the CDC regulations are right now is if you're fully vaccinated, even if you're direct contact, you're not going into quarantine.
Right.
You
that's
test,
true.
and it was 3 to 5 days, and now I think they're saying 5 to 7 days that folks should test after exposure.
You
Okay,
don't have to quarantine
Yep,
everybody else around you.
and you don't have to get tested unless you have a symptom.
they suggest that you test regardless.
Okay,
It was 3 to 5 days after exposure, now it's 5 to 7 days after exposure.
I mean, these kids would have been together before practicing and
Well, it could be
everything.
different come April.
Sure.
This is in
Sure.
April, right? So the trip in April.
Yeah.
So I mean, you have a lot of time, I think, for those things to
But I
shift.
think you have to be proactive because it would be like last April. We
Yeah.
just don't know. I mean, probably what people do not know.
That's the challenge is, and I think that was your point, is that, knowing the dates, those absolutes for reimbursement, should the trips have to be canceled, what are the policies with the airlines around COVID?
Right.
Different from every airline now.
Oh, yes.
Do they give you a credit? Do they give you a refund? Do they give you anything?
Right,
What's
right.
the
Well,
deal with that?
I think any trip needs to just be at your own risk.
Or we need to offer an insurance that they can buy or something, I don't know.
Right.
But
Well, I think you could
But I don't
offer,
think the school should be responsible for refunding for an extracurricular trip.
no, but that's where legally, where we, how do we protect ourselves so that they
Right.
don't come to us? Because
it's that case of the Chinese, the
Well,
the one that, what was that one, the private school,
the
where she
Kent
got sick and they
school that
sued
she
them.
got
It
bit
wasn't,
by,
it was really her fault, but it wasn't you know, it wasn't.
Right.
Anyway, because they,
Yeah,
oh,
they
you
sued
know,
Ken for like $8 million.
trying to cover all your
But this
bases.
is just, this is just different though than it was when this all started. We had the DC trip
Right.
situation.
Yes, yes.
And the
that's true,
French
that's
trip
true, that's true,
situation,
that's true,
right?
yeah,
We
yeah,
know a lot more now, and at the time, we
Yes,
tried to
right.
help and we did
Yeah,
financially.
Right, right.
But I don't think that's the situation now. Everyone knows what the risks are going
But you can
in.
definitely get insurance for that. And you can
Yeah.
recommend to parents to go to an insurance site if they're concerned that they can't afford to lose the $1,000 or $1,500. It'll cost them 10% of the trip. Yeah. And they can add
And
that
it's-
into their costs. you know,
And it's,
that's-
you know, insisting, I know we did for our international trips. It was part of the package that you were gonna get the trip insurance.
right, and they do that here.
Yeah, we do
Costa
that too,
Rica and
yeah.
everything that you have to, but I don't know what insurance covers COVID right now.
Right.
And I also, like the.
A lot of them do, a lot of the policies do, because we're traveling them and we're getting that, and most of them say specifically, it's COVID, they will do something for COVID.
So who does all that research, Sharon, as far as insurance and,
So this one, because this is an athletic trip, I
Yeah.
would say that Dan and the coaches
okay,
would be on top of making sure that those pieces are taken care of. So I think from my end, I just need to let them know
yeah,
what information we're specifically looking for. And you know, we had asked, I think at the board meeting, you know, what the deadlines were for, you know, what percentage of reimbursement, you know, what are those timelines? So really on the international trips,
yeah,
you know, when you're gonna get
Yes.
50% back. when you're
Yes,
getting
yes,
75%
yes,
back.
right. And the parents will sign off on that.
Mhm.
So we need,
So Dan needs to get that for this particular trip.
Yeah.
Find out that. And are they all flying at the same time on the same airline? Or are they doing individual trips and meeting there?
I'm not sure. I would assume that they would be traveling together.
the last time they did,
I just didn't know now.
they met, I think you dropped your kid off at Bradley.
Okay.
And then they flew Southwest, I think, because it's refundable.
Right.
Or those flights are expensive now. I love flying Southwest. It's
Yeah.
usually what I fly my kids because they like to change their mind at the last second.
I was gonna say, the Southwest is pretty flexible.
And it's unlimited, not unlimited, but you get the two bags with all
Mhm.
their equipment
Yes.
and their uniforms and everything. They needed that, but. So, I just feel like what we need to tell them, you know, to tell them what we need is we do want an insurance option for parents. And we do want it spelled out by date, what the loss could be to parents.
Here's a question that, do we want to include that that before leaving, should we require a PCR test from everyone regardless of whether they're vaccinated or not, or is that overkill?
Also like
I
that's a-
think it's, I think it's a good idea.
Are we paying for it?
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's a good idea, and it may be possible to facilitate having it done right at the school or right nearby. I think it's a great idea. I mean, even though we may have most of this under control in our community, I now know a half a dozen people who have the variant or have had the variant and have been sick, yeah, including one of my daughters. So it's I don't think this is going away anytime soon.
My only thought with that, the only reason for bringing it up is, you know, if there is an asymptomatic student,
Yeah.
we might
You're right,
prevent
you're right.
someone getting stuck in
Yes,
Florida.
yes, right,
Right,
you're right,
right.
you're right, you're right, that's true.
Yeah.
They have to stay
Right.
home, but
I think this should just be included, find out what the cost is and get somebody here. I think
And
that's
then
a great idea.
talk to Darcy about when she wants to have that done.
well,
As
they're all
far as-
free sites. I mean, there are
I mean,
free
how many days
sites.
before
Yep.
travel? You know,
Yeah, but
if it's a
getting
3 day
those
before
results.
travel, then we
Getting
can
the
her
results,
before.
we need the
Let me
results.
Because
tell
getting
you.
the results could be
Could be.
hard.
That could be problematic. We
But then
need to have
again,
some guarantee.
it could be April, so maybe there's testing sites are gonna be open, who knows what it's gonna look like.
Well, and
Yeah.
right now, because there are so many folks who are choosing the option to test out of getting vaccinated, there
Oh,
are,
wow.
that, you know, that's been a big deal. It's, you know, it's something that I wanted to talk about it if we have time today. If not, we can wait until the next time we meet. But you know, for folks who are in good faith trying to get, and we haven't had the issue yet, but who are in good faith trying to get their tests done weekly, in the appropriate amount of time to get the results to be able to come to work. Again, there are no policies out there, but there are practices in place in the various districts around how they're handling when someone either is refusing to get tested or their test results are not back in time to actually be able to come to school, as to whether or not it's unpaid or paid administrative leave. For the,
It's hard for them to.
most places.
Even if you can't get your test back in
Yeah,
time?
because you have a week to go get tested. So if you don't do that.
I mean,
and
say you go get your test every Wednesday,
Mhm.
to get it back on Friday, so you come to work on Monday.
No, because you could get it done, for us, you can get it done. It's not a 2-day window, like you have the week to get tested and submit those results.
No, there's a limit. It can't be more than 3 days.
It might be Thursday through,
That's
that's the
it.
weekend.
Yes, yeah, you definitely, yeah, you have the
Right.
weekend.
Right.
Most places are 2 days, but I think it's an all thing.
I mean, I think if you took it in all good
In
faith
good
and
faith,
tried,
right.
and then the results for some reason did not come back, that's a different story. But if you waited till the day before and your
That's what I
results
mean.
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
come
yeah,
back,
that's, yeah.
then the
Right.
first week, that was fine, but since then.
So I'll check with Darcy to
Just
kind
to
of get the
pinpoint-
exact timeline.
Pinpoint the day that she would want it done, so that everything is cleared out.
Right.
And it's step-by-step instructions. Parents know, this is my timeline
Right.
for this trip.
And honestly, the parents should know, because if this is too much and this is stressing them out, then their kid doesn't go.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds terrible, but I think we have to be so clear now. And I mean, Nancy, you brought up a point I hadn't even thought, like, what if the kid does test positive on this test, is sick, loses taste, they sue us for whatever, because it was one of our trips. I don't know what happens there.
Well, keep in mind that anybody can sue anybody for anything at any time.
Absolutely.
You can cover yourself with policy, or we can cover ourselves, but we can't predict whether somebody's going to sue us or not.
That's right.
Okay, so we'll have a timeline of testing and vaccination. Also, I really like how they explain like what fully vaccinated
Yes.
means, so that people in April aren't starting to get their first shot.
Yes.
And then quarantine the risk of what would be expected, although it sounds like we would be okay, because especially if they're testing negative before leaving, I don't think the trip is more than 5 days.
No.
So I don't think, unless someone was super symptomatic, I don't think we can test. And then insurance, as well as like an outline of cancellation and what the loss of funds would be.
So
So
I think
then,
it sounds to me like it's just a bonus that the nurse is willing, or a nurse is willing to go on this trip, but that's not necessarily something that you want to make a policy, right? That a nurse
Whenever
travels.
possible, it's great to
Right.
have a medical person there. I think in this day and age right now.
Right.
But yeah, I don't think we can make it.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
so then to staff, because they keep coming with field trip requests, right? Because I'm sure that at the AgAd, right, is gonna have their event, and the debate team will win and have to go to
Yes.
their event, and the business, right? So should we come up with like guidelines of what's required? Because whatever field trip packet is that they have to fill out probably doesn't include the insurance and all these dates.
Yeah, I think we can create an addendum
Yeah.
to the field trip request for overnight field
Yeah,
trips.
the field trip request from they fill out is the same one, I think, from like
Yeah,
10 years ago.
Let's just say
Like, I
20
think
years
we
ago.
need
yeah.
an
20 years
updated
ago,
version.
If it's not been updated in 20 years.
And I honestly think the cancellation and the insurance should be there no matter, like that should be permanent. Like the
Right.
vaccination and testing is one thing, but because we didn't have any of that, and then that's where the whole DC trip fell apart.
Yeah.
Because we had nothing, we didn't require anything.
I think that has to be outlined,
Right.
no matter what.
Right.
And they've got to work with the companies
Yeah.
to have that done.
So in the beginning of this conversation, and I'm happy to work with Dan actually to put the language together, and then we can send it to the committee to make sure that it's complete. And we can also get the form from Darcy with the H1N1 piece, because I
Yeah.
think having that parents signing off that they understand their responsibility.
Yeah.
Should the child become sick. But the other thing that we mentioned at the beginning was that anyone attending, and it won't be as much of a dilemma with, well, it might be. So we're saying staff, players, coaches, chaperones. And we know, we have the vaccination status of our staff. They are not, like I said, we have a very small number as a district of people who are opting for the testing. And so my question is, do they have to have a religious or a medical exemption in order to test out as a student would for this trip? Or do they follow the executive order?
I think they would have, because they're gonna be in Florida, right? So God forbid they get it, and now they're not vaccinated, then they are quarantined, right? Then we're down a chaperone.
So with the same standards, we're going to require vaccination from everyone, parents, staff, coaches,
Only
chaperones,
adults. that's going with it.
unless they have a religious or medical exemption, and then they would have.
But everybody's gonna get a
testing.
PCR test, so it doesn't matter, you know, that,
Right,
that part of it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Everybody has to have a PCR test. I mean, I think part of it comes down to what you sent us also about vaccination, regulations and contact with them. I mean, we're expecting the same of everybody, and I think we continue to, to expect the same of everybody.
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Sure.
So are we attempting to develop a policy around this, an actual formal policy, or just give guidelines to the superintendent or the board? I'm a little confused. That's one question here. And the other is, if we're trying to do a policy, it probably, we would want it to be encompassing of all kinds of field trips that it would apply to, yes? And you get, I'm just not sure what we're doing.
I think if
We
we
are
didn't have
given-
something to go on to begin with,
No one has a policy.
yeah, no one has a policy, so we're just trying to get something together now to,
At least a framework right now.
I think the policy's gonna come out of what we look at later.
I don't even have our field trip policy, I don't know.
The combination of that and.
That may be what needs major editing then, and updating. And
So it probably needs the editing.
I mean, who knew we'd have to be doing this kind of stuff, but
And I think something else that they should have to do, that should be included, is we will be following actual CDC
Yes,
guidelines.
I was just gonna say.
recommendations. So we're saying all this, but if
Yes, right.
in April, God help us, something horrible happens and they don't, we would continue to follow the direction of the.
Yes.
Right, 'cause if
CSC.
if travel restrictions come back and things
Right.
like that, and those who travel out of state and those things,
Right.
then we
Right.
have to follow them.
Yeah,
Right, that's right.
and then we need Shipman to review it and see if what we're asking is.
Yeah.
is even
Shipman.
possible.
I've been in contact with Shipman every day for the past 9 days.
They're getting that better Connecticut River from their
That's all we
offices.
pay.
huh? I went in there one day and I was like, oh, no wonder. We have this amazing view, this conference room. I'm like, oh, really?
yeah, Really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I feel like I have my marching orders. I think, Deborah, your point's an important one in taking a look at where this would fit into the current field trip policy. And, even if these are guidelines, eventually, right now they might be guidelines, but eventually they may be either an addendum or just infused into the updating of the field trip policy.
well, it just might make it easy so in the future, so we don't have to redo this for every single trip. Because the basics around health and safety shouldn't change, trip to trip. So there ought to be some things that we can put into play that will inform our parent community and have everybody be prepared for the weird times we're living in right now.
Well, even the correspondence Holland talks about 70, for trips greater than 72 hours. I think their guidelines are trying to encompass all trips.
Yeah.
So it's not, I don't feel like this conversation is specific to the softball trip.
No,
Right.
The only thing that really it gets into kind of the weeds is, COVID is very specific to the testing windows
Correct.
and,
Right.
those
Right.
specific
And that could change.
cases.
That's the thing that's so hard. That could change, like you said, now would change to 5 to 7, and last week it was 3 to 5.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's a moving target.
so our next board meeting is November 4th.
Yes.
Yes.
We won't, I mean, I can meet next week, I don't know, like how, because I would like them to do it because they needed that information back.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, and
for the
it's not
time
policy,
being,
so they don't need to read it, but what are our marching orders with this? Like,
I think, I can get together with Dan. I'll email. He wanted to be here tonight, but he had another event that he had to be at.
Yeah.
But Dan and I can sit down and kind of hash out the sample and send it out to you.
okay,
We could have a meeting next week if you wanted to.
We might, if we got the field trip policy, we might be able to see where it's going to fit into that,
right.
and look at it in terms of that as well.
Mhm. The thing is that.
I'm not going to add it to the policy. I'm just saying we can just make sure we're not
Yeah,
setting
yeah,
ourselves up for failure.
And there is a revised field trip policy, just a straight up field trip policy.
yeah,
But it doesn't address, and that's from CAVE, it's not
Okay.
from shipment.
Oh.
But it doesn't address any of the COVID pieces.
No, right, exactly. No, I wouldn't expect it to, but I just would like to see our policy.
I can send that to
We may
you.
have something in there. Some of this a little bit of this might already be there.
I read through it, there's not,
It doesn't,
no, it doesn't address the COVID side.
or the
Or-
cancellation, cancellation issue,
Yeah.
refunds, that should be in
you're right.
there. Insurance, no matter what.
And it could be something general, like
Yeah.
health and safety, right? Like saying.
well,
you
and
know,
that's what a lot of the addendums are anyway, on all these other
That's true,
policies.
that's true.
Is the health and safety piece,
Right.
So maybe that's what we considered, at least these guidelines right now could be some health and safety guidelines or a health and safety addendum for the current policy.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then, and
Except
that's
that-
something that could happen rather quickly. And then we could have a meeting in November to fully review the field trip policy with those guidelines.
But I think
But-
what you're saying though is, I think I think Liz's concern is that maybe that we meet next week is because this trip is coming up fast for the ag,
Mm-mm,
right?
They're already done.
Canceled.
Oh,
Oh, it's
they're getting
canceled?
Oh,
yes.
the conference itself.
Oh,
Nope.
That's good.
We
Indiana,
talked a
you
little,
don't
I
like
think we talked about it at the meeting last week. I got an email from Matt that 2 of the individuals declined
Oh,
to attend. So
oh,
they
wow.
canceled it.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
On health reasons, or you don't know?
they just decided, yeah,
Well, two of them were graduates, right?
I think 3 of them.
Yeah.
We only had one
Yeah,
actual
one student,
student.
Maybe I could have done that.
Yeah.
So can we enforce this stuff we're talking about if it's not policy? Because it could just be guidelines, right? Or,
Well, so that's what Dr. Bookman, I had asked, is his email based on policy? And he said, no, it was just agreed upon guidelines by
right,
the board.
so I think that's what we have to,
I
because
think,
we
yeah, I
can't.
think once we get there, I think we have to
Mhm.
do it, yes.
So that's something that really it can be on the agenda for November.
But health and safety is the one piece, the other piece is the refunds and the insurance, which
Right,
is.
exactly.
Which,
Seems like that could be added to the policy. I mean,
right, but that takes us months.
No, I
because
know,
we
it
have
takes 2
to,
months. Yeah.
Review
I mean,
it.
I can meet next week.
I can too, I can do Tuesday or Wednesday.
Wednesdays are always better for me because I don't have millions. I don't have multiple soccer, but I'm not looking at my soccer schedule for next week.
I'm available.
I'm not available at all, so
Can't do it next Wednesday.
We have admin negotiations
Wednesday.
actually Tuesday and Wednesday.
I can do Thursday.
Monday. I could do it, but that's it.
We have,
Next Monday?
I have a family. my family meeting with,
Oh, yeah.
family conversation.
I could do Monday, potentially, at 6.
I could do Monday or
I'll
Thursday.
probably be late,
but I
but,
can't do it.
or I could do
I have a
6:30.
game, I think my son has a game here on Monday. So I could stay after.
I have commission, a NEAS commission meeting, but it's by Zoom, and it's done by 5, so I could do it Monday.
Maybe 6 or 6:30 on Monday.
6:30 would be way safer for me. Is that okay?
That's fine, yeah.
Okay.
On the 25th?
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
Oh, okay, excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong time.
this is the only thing that I do.
I'm not gonna say I'm coming because I don't think I can, so. But I don't think you need me, but someone.
So then we can talk about the facilities then.
Yes, so I will get with, I'm actually gonna email Dan as soon as this meeting's over. He and I will find some time over the next 2 days to get together and put a proposal together. We'll try and get it to you by Friday,
Okay.
so that you have time to look at it over the weekend.
Yeah, please.
And then I'll send along our current policy as well, just so that you have
Yes,
that.
that would be
great.
nice, thank you.
And I'm gonna send the CABE policy
Oh, I'm sure you'll have this.
also.
How binding are guidelines?
Well, I think my honest opinion is, right now with everything not, there's not anything, there's no case law, there's no, I think districts are really just trying to put information out there for kids. And as long as we're all on the same page, and, I'm not going rogue on, on what we're doing, we're as safe, I think, as we can be. There's always the chance for pushback, with any of these pieces. And it's regardless of whether it's, District 19 or any of the other schools who are grappling with the same situation.
I think as long as we're consistent, right, and that we have these steps and that we give people enough notice. Like, I think it would be
Yeah.
terrible
I agree.
to
I agree.
have a field trip plan and then be like, oh, these are the rules, by the way.
Well, and.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if someone, I guess we'll have to cross that bridge, and I do appreciate the sensitivity of any restrictive, behavior with certain people. But I'm just wondering if we put out our rules and somebody says, nope, not going to do it. I mean,
Nope, you're not going to come.
well, that would be Miss Deborah, but
Because we're, we can reach out to Kerma as well. There's a certain degree of liability
yes,
we undertake when we go on these kinds of field trips in the first place, throw COVID in.
Right.
And, that liability factor is compounded. So, I think we're within our rights to want to protect our kids.
absolutely.
I think Karma is the one that made us get the insurance for the Costa Rica trip, right? And then
Oh,
canceled
yes,
all
I think
the-
you're right. That's true.
canceled all the zip lining and all the fun stuff. The fun stuff, yeah.
We just went, because of the climbing wall that's been in play for a couple of years, I think.
Yes.
Way before my time.
Yep.
And I just met for probably the third or fourth time with Katie Dobratz today to go through the Kerma hold harmless form, which is pages and pages long, but absolutely necessary. But as Deborah said, with any of these hold harmless, we still took risks.
All right, well, thank
Makes
you
my
for
brain
doing
hurt.
that.
Well, if we are trying to be responsible, and I think that's important. Also, as you said, it's not going to be sprung on people. We are giving adequate time.
And notice.
Yes,
Options, when you've got, longer than 5 weeks, and we know that the Pfizer vaccine, in order to be fully vaccinated, they have options. They can either, get vaccinated or come through with their exemption, the religious or medical exemption. We have all the forms for those from the state at this point. So it gives families options, and it does provide flexibility through those exemptions that are there. Okay,
Yeah.
this is the harder one.
No.
So and it doesn't, my proposal is that if you've had an opportunity to look at some of them, that we just pick one for now to use as a template, and then take the pieces from the other
I guess I have this,
policies.
but print it off. You can have that.
Take the pieces from the other policies that we might like to add in. So, Kim and I were talking about the ones that kind of jumped out to me. Like, I really liked the language. I liked how concise, and I'm always a fan of bullets and outlines. It just seems clearer to me. So I really liked the Shelton School District. Just because its format was nice. I didn't necessarily love everything in it, and those are things that we can talk about and change. But that was one of the ones that I liked. And Kim, I'm gonna let you.
Yeah, so you guys missed the meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, so just to bring you guys up to date, we had two presentations at the board. Basically, community members have come forward and they would like to have us consider naming the soccer fields after Blomstrand, Coach Blomstrand, and the basketball court after Pirates. And I think the thought is because it would be, they've 40-year coaches, and it'd be something nice to do for the community and for them. So we don't have a policy regarding naming. So we've been looking at other policies, and Sharon went through the naming process at Windsor Locks. So she has a policy. I actually like the Windsor Locks policy a lot, but I agree with Sharon too, that I also really like the format of the Shelton policy. And there's some things in all the policies that we looked at that are consistent, and I think that would be important to move forward. And those are things like community input, a time frame, so that we can say this is either, it's going to take either 2 meetings or 30 to 60 days, so it doesn't drag on. Having a committee for naming, that we have their permission and they're comfortable with it being named.
Because that could,
Yeah. So one thing too that was kind of inconsistent in the policy, Sharon, I don't know if you noticed, but was like who pays for the signage
Yeah.
and stuff. And some of the policies indicate that the people who make the request pay for the signage.
That's what we did
Yeah.
in Windsor Locks. It was so there was generally some sort of committee that did fundraising
Yeah.
that we worked with to coordinate and had some say in, for Windsor Locks, it was, one was a soccer field and one was a football field. One had a little more funding than the other. So the money and we picked out a lovely stand and a plaque and, for the soccer field, but it certainly was not as nice. So there's a certain degree of consistency, I think, that we want to have in that process. The football field was like granite. It was this beautiful granite sign. So there is some, oversight there, and that I think needs to happen to make sure that there's consistency in the form. And but there's a difference between a field that might have, a sign and a plaque if you're doing a gymnasium or a hallway or whatever the case may be.
and we're aware, I think the only thing we have named so far, like somebody stop me if I'm wrong, is Whitman. Right, George Whittam, Whittam, the George Whittam Gymnasium. I think that's the only one that we have named.
Gymnasium or
Where's that?
Yeah, it's the first, it's the original gym. I'm pretty sure.
Jim?
To George Whittam, yes, I'm pretty sure.
I think it's a French gym, I'm not
So
sure.
then what do we?
I
Is
think
there a
it's-
sign?
I think so, yes, I think there was some there, like tiny little sign
Right, so
like
that, so we
this.
need to determine.
Right,
All of that.
undo the
because-
Whittam Gym.
Right, and
I
that's,
know,
yeah, that's
we
not.
never
their
call it
intent.
that, you know, so I mean, I think this is, I'm a little uncomfortable moving this too fast,
Mhm.
because it's not gonna, something that we do in this particular district, I think it's something that needs to be done. I mean, because I have to say, I really pushed that Hall of Fame, but, you know, got twice and then nobody picked it up, that's I'm gonna pitch it 3 times, so. I think it's important, those things, and I totally would agree with the Blomstrand and Powers, but I think you also, I like some of these other ones that said, yeah, you gotta wait 3 years, you know, or 5 years. So they're dead? No, I don't think so, but.
Right, we were talking, so at both of the fields in Windsor Locks, there had been no fields dedicated. And then, you know, they had, we want the soccer field dedicated to Coach Sullivan, who was an icon. I got to teach with him for a year. He was awesome. He's a hoot. He was a legend, actually. And gave me all kinds of parenting advice. But I was happy that we were able to get the policy in place and that, you know, and it was a process because with the policy comes a committee. The committee has to review the request and, you know, going through all of those steps to make sure that it fits the criteria. And then the process of actually planning what it's going to look like and, you know, what the ceremony is going to be and all of that is a pretty big to do. But it was lovely that Coach got to experience the dedication of the facility to him
Oh,
before he passed.
While he was still alive.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's really important, I
Yeah.
really do.
But then the
For his
thing
family
comes
as
up,
well.
like, how much are we gonna name, right? Should the auditorium be the Lenore Grunko Auditorium? And should it be the Silander World Language?
Yeah, I know,
Like,
exactly.
like,
Yes,
what
I-
is-
That's what that makes me a little nervous.
Right, but I think that what's consistent in all of these policies, though, is talking about that they have had a long history with the school. I mean, both Coach Blomstrand and Pirates have been here for 40 years. That's why we're not naming things every 5 and 10 years.
No,
I
right,
mean, this
but
is
when do we limit what gets named?
Yes. I was
When we
gonna say-
run out of things to name.
I know, we don't name the LMC, we can make the Salus Library.
The Bruce Silva Superintendent Wing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it could
I know,
just
where
be-
do you stop? I agree, Liz. That's.
40 years can be your cutoff.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean,
I don't think anyone's
Right, you are not eligible.
I guess I'm not.
Well, in one of the policies you might be, because you've been on the board for a long time.
The
Well, let's-
Silander Language Lab. I see it
Anyway,
I know,
yeah. So
but-
I mean, I think we need to be,
now. So what's the foundations? Because I know he showed up at the next, I was at the second meeting where he was kind of reminding everybody, what is their, like, are they?
Well, I think ideally they would have liked it a while they can enjoy it.
Right. But we
You
have
know,
time to
that-
develop our.
Right, I mean, I think in an ideal world, it would have been like discussed over the summer and we would have done something on senior night. I mean, that's not gonna happen, you know that.
Right.
So, our senior night's November 2nd. But I think just to know that it's moving forward, right? That we could develop, you know, have the policy, form the committee,
Right.
talk about it. You know, if they need to do a formal recommendation or a presentation, if we decide we want to do a community survey, all
Right.
those things just to get it moving before a decision is made.
Yeah, I think a community survey is super important because, yeah, they've been here 40 years, but there are plenty of people that might not like them.
Well, I do think that it's amazing how even really excellent people are forgotten. Like our drama director at my high school was phenomenal. And because, you know, people retire that know her or whatever, you know, the younger teachers didn't know who she was. And they took down all the plaques and awards of the plays that, you know, she had been acknowledged for, put them in a box. And it was like, Mrs. Klein, who? You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. So I can see why this should move forward.
also just thinking that in today's, it would just be nice to have something to bring the community together.
Yes,
People from the past, the present, looking forward.
yes.
Oh, I
I
totally
think that would
agree.
be really nice for our
Absolutely.
community during.
And we could use it.
Yes, but there should be a committee then.
Yes,
because
there
that
should
is a lot of work.
Oh, yeah, there,
So the people that bring forward the proposal need to bring the funding and the committee and.
I think they'll be able to do that. I'm not
Correct.
concerned about that. I think they'll be able to do it. They had a really nice presentation, all these kids,
It was very
back in the day.
yeah, I mean, the first night they had a video presentation they kept it within their time frame
Yeah,
to
well,
talk, and they
it's like,
had,
yeah, it's good.
they did
He
a
timed it.
really nice
He
job.
he made
Yeah.
sure he was on, yeah.
Yeah, they did a great job.
I think that, there's two committee sides to it. So there's the committee, the policy committee that's creating those specific guidelines. And then the committee that is generated for every time you're getting a proposal or getting a request, they have to fill out some sort of document.
Like,
At that point, you then assemble a committee that's specific to that person.
Right.
So, there's certain, you gotta have, we did, and there were a couple of the different policy samples that, either the superintendent or their designee, and then,
Board member.
the principal,
The principal,
this is-
students.
and I think
students.
a couple former students.
Yeah.
But who is the committee that vets these in the first place? Like, should they come right to the Board of Ed, or is there a pre-committee that they, You know what I
they
mean?
came to the board.
okay.
That
Because
was
we're-
and then the
Right.
board would have to say to the superintendent, okay, you vote to assemble a committee
That does all
that does it.
And so they made a presentation. So I don't know if we consider that a formal request, or we say, hey, can you put in a written proposal following these guidelines?
I think it's
know?
okay to do that. Yeah, I think if they're anxious, but I think anything before the spring is unrealistic.
I think
Something in
they'll be
April.
happy if we know we're moving
Yes.
moving
right.
forward,
Yeah, okay.
knowing that we have to do
Yeah, okay.
a policy and,
Right.
they're on board, so they know how these things.
Yes.
But I think that's why, just to know we're moving forward in the policy. But here's an example of like some of the like different forms, and you flip the page, you can see there's the questions, there's an essay, there's
Oh, right,
Media.
right.
which they did already in their 3-minute presentation, but I'm sure that if we asked them, they would be able to
Right.
do longer presentation.
Right.
It's funny, because this one is like, the board identifies the need for naming. Right? And this is a community group wanting something named. So that's where I'm a little like, how many groups can keep coming?
I know, that's what I'm worrying too. I mean, at what point do we stop?
Right.
You know.
Well, it's interesting. So again, the board has the opportunity, because we felt the same way, because we knew as soon as this first one got done, we knew who the second one was.
Yeah.
And we knew it was coming fast.
Of course.
So basically, we had 2 field namings, 2 years in a row.
Mhm.
I don't believe they've had any, that's not true. They did have another one. Probably 2 or so years later, for the swim coach, and it was just a plaque in the pool that they were looking to do to dedicate it. So,
Well, they did something similar to that. I think we were in Coach died. So,
yeah, and the coach had passed, and
I'm
the
not too
family
worried
donated
about,
it all.
I'm sorry, I'm not too worried about us getting, 15 recommendations, because that's not like it hasn't been our culture.
Yes,
Right, but I
exactly,
think
exactly.
that's what worries me a little bit, is somebody who's as worthy doesn't have an active group backing them. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I
Like,
would think if you had enough people represented that somebody would say, hey, well, what about so-and-so?
right.
Why aren't you nominating him? And you bring that out, then you.
But I mean, for different, like art and music, like maybe,
Right, exactly.
like,
No,
what
no,
are they?
yeah.
There might be- I don't know.
Well, I think too, what some of these policies, talk about is, the historical and naming something specific to what they're doing, So So say we decide, oh, we're gonna redo the whole auditorium, right? We've been talking about that, right? Okay. Okay.
And that's
So say-
another 20-year thing.
Okay, so we're gonna redo the whole auditorium. That might be a time when we can discuss, or maybe that's when someone would bring that forward.
Right.
You know, like,
Right.
oh, let's dedicate this new space.
Yeah.
Or,
And we had talked about sponsors for the field. Remember, like at one point we were like, can we have the Coca-Cola soccer field and make $20,000
Oh,
or
yes,
something?
right.
And I don't know where that ever.
I think we pretty much said no.
Yeah.
I think we pretty much rejected that. Yeah.
or maybe when we build a second turf field.
This is like the
Oh
Yukon.
my
Just-
God, we
just
could
put
not
that-
have a field,
put
another
that
field
there.
before we have an auditorium.
Oh, wow.
That will.
Oh, not another field. We talked about the redoing. of the
No,
field.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
resurfacing the fields.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
maintaining.
Yeah, I think you just have to be, I think you have to be careful, you know.
Right,
That you're just
right.
not OD and that you're, and I also worry about things like, you know, you have the pharma thing, you know, and you get somebody who shows up with, you know, some baggage
Mhm.
later, you know. So I think you have to be really careful about this.
Yeah.
Because
Well, and that's why it's important, I think, that,
long term.
well, yes, that there's been a long history, right? And also that you ask this person in the different
Yes.
policies, request different ways if they actually want this honor. How did you go about that in Windsor Locks?
So the families were included
Okay,
as part of the process.
Okay.
From the very beginning. The folks who were making the proposal had actually already reached out to families
okay,
and actually the two of the individuals were still alive. And for the third person who was deceased, his family was part of the people asking for the proposal and had actually donated the signage. Where they were willing to donate the sign, and that's what they did. So they were part of the process, and that maybe we put that in there, that if there is, you know, either a family member or the person, probably not the individual, we would want permission, if they want to be involved in the process. It certainly could be.
well,
I don't know about that. I'll let you go first. Was that Nancy? Go ahead.
Go ahead. I agree. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either. I mean, maybe I missed it, you know, missed something. But I don't know if someone asks you, you know, think about it from your point of view. If somebody says, Sharon, I want to acknowledge your grandfather. Would you like to, you know, be really involved in this? How?
Say, I want a crown.
Well, a tiara at least, you know.
I hear what you're saying, but we did reach out to the individuals to see what they'd be comfortable with.
right, that's all I'm saying is if they would be comfortable with being honored in that way.
And then how big, like for some folks are they're shy, they're humble. They don't necessarily want a big hoopla. They don't necessarily mind the honor, but,
Well, and that's the ceremony planning
Yeah.
piece, you know, if it, you know, and that's, like you said, could be a second committee.
When I was looking at the school naming proposals, you know, policies, one of the schools said that, oh, once it's named, it can never be changed. I would never want that in our policy. Because now that we are finding out all of these skeletons dropping out of closets, you know.
Well, I think
For that.
it would have to be limited that you would change it. There'd be some.
Yeah, there's some good verbiage of that. so.
Yeah, you could fix that like that.
Yes, I think so.
So I like Sharon's original thought that we take one of these policies that we like the best and then add or delete and rework it so that it's not a whole bunches of policies to look at.
I do like the Windsor locks. I'm not trying to gain favoritism, but I kind of like that. And I'm not sure if it was Waterbury or not. You know, there was another one. I think it was Waterbury. We could maybe take a few things from that. We could maybe use the Windsor lock as the frame, and then if we see a few other pieces,
I love-
yeah. We might incorporate it. I don't know what I said that was funny. I'm sorry.
Oh, we're saying, Kim said that we could change the format because I really like the format on the
Shelton.
Shelton.
Well, just take Windsor Locks and bullet it.
Exactly.
Well, I actually really like the Windsor Locks one because a couple of things. It talks about considering the community's preferences, establish a committee, give a scope and schedule for the committee's work, opportunities for public input, and that the individual must have shown broad-based long-term impact on the district and its community. I like it because I think it's kind of broad. I would prefer a policy like this rather than one that gives us all these, how to work for 7 years and do this for 17 years. And
Yes,
be
right,
tired.
be specific about the length of time. involved.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'd
I
rather
agree.
not
I
do that
agree.
because I think this is so infrequent
Mhm.
that I just really don't think we're gonna be opening the floodgates. I really don't. This is, the people that have brought this forward, both individuals are very long-term here. I don't anybody else. Now, I do want to
If you
say
put
there's a lot.
timelines on it too. I mean, it's gone are the days that you have people coaching or
Exactly.
even in some cases teaching in the same place
Right.
for 40 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Years.
And also, like, as far as Don Blomstrand goes, I mean, he has the title, the winningest coach in Connecticut.
Yes.
Multiple other,
He's got national honors.
and multiple other soccer fields named after coaches that, haven't even coached as long as him and have these honors that he has.
This is hilarious. The Windsor Locks policy includes that a plaque identifying the individuals or groups' unique contribution to Amity.
Oh.
They copied somebody else's.
We did footnote it at the end.
Oh my gosh, that is so hilarious. To be able to be named the Windsor Locks, you need to have done something wonderful in Amity.
In our defense, I believe, so I downloaded every file that existed in both mine and the former superintendent's
Oh my
thing.
goodness.
So this is probably a
A
draft.
draft?
Oh, draft.
But,
So funny.
yeah. But yeah,
What I-
that's always fun when that happens.
Yeah.
What I really liked from the Shelton piece was just the introduction and the general statement of the board policy, where it said, and Windsor Locks touched upon it a little bit too, but I really liked that it said that basically naming provides important continuity and pride for past, present, and future students and residents of the community. Naming school district facilities can add a sense of pride to the community as well as recognition throughout the area. I just kind of,
Yeah, I like that.
I like that. So that was like the piece I would want to move over
Mhm.
if we were to bullet point or combine.
I really like their headings too.
Me
I mean,
too.
it's similar process for naming.
That's what Sharon and I were saying. We really like,
Right.
it's so easy to break it down.
Someone said also though about, it will be infrequent. Where was that?
Yes,
paragraph? I
yes.
like that paragraph, wherever that
Oh,
was.
that was right here. This policy notwithstanding, it is the intent of the board that
Yes,
naming of
yes.
portions of the building and school
Yes.
grounds occur infrequently and on a limited basis.
Yes, I like that. I think that's important. That way people know.
Is that from Shelton as well?
That actually was from the sample Region 19,
Oh,
the
okay.
last sentence.
Oh, there you are.
The one from Shipman.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I guess that's, what's it, you're right.
So we're kind of playing mishmash.
Yeah.
Which paragraph is that? This.
It's
The
actually
last
the
one, the
last
one.
statement.
Got it.
They talk about a survey, which I think is really important, and I think it's better than asking people for public comment, because we know we just don't get enough participation. But should we give some sort of guidelines on what the survey should include? Like, can anyone just make up their own survey about?
And the room might be able to find,
Or even, create our own.
What questions need to be
Survey.
included?
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that's probably what the committee would develop.
Yeah, but we want to make sure they're developing something
Of
that
course,
we,
right,
Oh, yeah, right.
maybe just a few questions that must be included. I don't know.
right. But I don't think, I don't,
job for my new advisory council.
Awesome.
I don't know, I don't think any of the policies went in specifics of the survey.
They didn't, that's what worried me a little bit. It's like, okay, survey, so you can put out a survey.
Yeah, but I don't think that's terrible and that it's leaving it open to really what are your resources at the time. You know, they want to survey the community.
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of a way of saying community input.
Well, I've got over 30 years of Hulkran children who have experienced both these coaches. So you can survey me. I vote yay. I'm not alone in that, man. All the people in my age group have had kids coached by these two men.
Really, all of the policies talk about, you know, having a written proposal for the superintendent. Was there one that you guys liked as far as like a format sheet? I mean, I wouldn't mind either saying written or, written or video or both, like as a media supplement. Just because of today's day and age.
Yeah, I know, yeah, right.
So I cut and pasted into the Windsor Locks, and we can change it, just so we remember, there were a couple of paragraphs that we wanted to make sure we included in some way.
Yep.
And so they don't make sense where they are right now, but at least they're kind of plopped in there. I do like the headings on the Shelton
Yeah,
piece.
I mean, the Windsor Locks one really, Windsor Locks one really opens it up. It says including rooms or small clusters of rooms, wings, like that's a lot of divvying up. Is that what we want? Or the Shelton one just says fields, buildings, like it's much more general. I mean, rooms, that scares me.
Oh, I know, yeah, me too, exactly. So you think like, well, there's the
The
music
Shelton one
room,
just says
there's the art
including
room.
school district properties, lands, buildings, or structures. Like, it's a little more
Yeah.
substantial
Limited.
than room.
I think it needs to be.
I mean, I think the room stuff is, or those smaller pieces, it's more, I mean, I always think of those, it's like, if there's like a tragedy. Or, you know, there's certain circumstances.
And I don't think you're naming the district facility. Like, you can put a plaque in the math wing for somebody, right? But like, it's not gonna be named that. Like, I think something that's named has to be bigger than a room, a cluster of rooms.
Yeah, I agree, I agree. Yeah.
The Shipman and Goodwin policy has a brief statement that says new building, major portion of a building or school grounds.
Yeah.
Major portion of the building, that's, yeah,
So that could be like the math wing.
yes, exactly, the math wing, the science wing.
Hey, is Nick Colangelo still here? No?
Colorado.
No way. He was my student. That makes me feel so old.
Sad. Sad to see him go.
Oh, okay.
But, very sad.
Right.
All right.
So we are getting up to our bewitching hour and close.
Yes.
So if we can decide today just which one we want to go from, and then our next
I
meeting,
thought we were sort of going from Windsor Law,
is that what we want to do?
because you
I'm good with that.
pasted some stuff in.
But
there.
you were gonna reformat it.
I'm gonna, yeah.
I don't know, I
and
feel like
add-
it's easier to go from Shelton and add the Windsor Lock stuff in.
That's kind of what I was hearing.
Yeah.
As we were kind of going through things.
Work
Doesn't
with-
matter.
Let's work with those two.
Yeah.
But also like a few things that are in the Shipman Goodman.
Yes.
That
Just that last
paragraph.
sentence.
Yeah, that last paragraph of sentence, yeah.
I think the best representation would be working with these three policies
Mhm.
and taking the bottom statement from the Shipman and Goodwin sample policy. Everyone likes the general, the first
Format.
part of Shelton.
Yep.
And then through the Shelton, use the primary information though from Windsor Locks
Mhm.
in the Shelton format, but taking out any specifics. A lot of the Shelton stuff is the same, I think,
Mhm.
as Windsor Locks, but taking out the very specific things like, deceased or only having, 3 years out or whatever those things.
Oh,
I
right, that's
don't want
what
any of
she does,
those in our policy.
No,
Um,
I don't either.
I also thought a fun one was, maybe it doesn't have to be stated, but number 9 on Shelton, self-nomination will not be considered.
I think that's good though. I think that's okay.
You know what? Covering all your bases, not a bad thing.
Well, thanks, Kim. I know where you're coming from.
So do we want to have a meeting? So next week's meeting will be specifically to deal with the field trip policy
Yes.
and the COVID piece.
I just realized that's in the 3 school days. Is that enough time? Okay, I just realized like, holy cow, that, and can we have a meeting that fast? How soon?
Oh.
It has to be posted for a day. So,
Okay,
if I ask Minnie to post an agenda just with review of field trip and
Okay.
COVID policy.
Okay.
For tomorrow, we'll be good to go.
Now, will this be combined? And then, we're not gonna bring it, we still have to look at this before we can bring it to the
Oh,
board.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Sure.
so it may not get to the
Yeah.
board until December.
Okay,
So then December, they'd receive them,
great.
and then in January, they'd vote on them.
So then we would need another policy meeting
in November.
in November.
And I
Should we
would love,
schedule that now?
yeah, and I would love to, I'd love to get a student, one of our student reps to, to join us maybe, if you don't mind.
And then, Sharon, what about these other policies? How time?
So they're, we're living with this existence right now. For me, I just, we can think about for the November meeting,
Okay,
if we want to formalize, because it hasn't been an issue yet, and I might have to make a decision at some point between now and November, but I'm hoping not. We've been Darcy's been amazing in communicating with everybody regarding testing and having a cycle and a process. So, it's been really
How
good.
many teachers do you have?
It's all staff, so it's not necessarily just
Oh,
teachers.
okay.
But, out of all staff, we had 15 who were not fully vaccinated, and that was going down to, I believe, 12
Okay.
who consistently are testing
Mhm.
weekly, and people have been really good about it. And they, and Darcy's been really everybody. But it's just that, the fact of if someone doesn't have their test on time, how are we responding? And for right now, my flexibility has been kind of that good faith piece. If people are on their cycle and they're doing it, and there's something that happens with the lab, how do we respond? And that is very different than someone saying, yeah, I'm gonna get tested this week, And so we do have some samples there of what other schools are doing. Most are doing, you're being put on admin leave without pay until, and then that's not forever, because in the eyes of consulting with legal, if you're choosing not to comply with the executive order, in essence, you are not meeting minimum job requirements,
Right.
conditions of employment, and therefore you're abandoning your position. And that's the language that I've been including in my correspondence to folks about stuff. So there's that. That's not an emergency. The other thing is looking at some of the revisions, and we can talk about this in November. It's not super, super urgent. The revised, the model policy revisions that have been made, some of them we've made revisions to already. So we tackled the sexual harassment changes, those
Oh, right.
policies
That's right.
last
Yes,
year.
Yes, yes.
Which was great. To me, that's urgent. Like, that's one that we really need to have on the books. I did color code.
Yes, I saw that.
I thought, actually, the highlighting in the email was from Shipman, but I color coded my copy of what I felt were the most urgent. The ones that have already been tackled, and then the ones that we would want to handle first. So, making changes to, use of school facilities, any of the low hanging fruit for the most part that was just about complying with health and safety standards. A lot of these are just coming up to speed and including holding folks accountable to the health and safety standards of the district, regardless of whether it's for COVID or something else. So Shipman put all of those in there. But the graduation requirements are something that we're going to need to tackle. I put that, Lou has drafts of grad requirements and student grading policies. So he is going to revisit that with a committee of teachers and students. And then it would be brought forward to the policy committee.
And I think Renee used to come to the meetings when we discussed, for some curriculum, but also she was involved with the grading, with this stuff. So when we discussed that, I think we should invite her.
Yep, I talked to her. Actually, she gets invited to every meeting.
Okay.
We talked about it the other day.
Okay.
She's like, do you want me to come to every meeting? I said, some of the stuff doesn't really directly impact you. So
Okay.
I'm gonna leave it up to you. You are welcome to come
Okay.
to every meeting, but for the ones that impact your department and
Yeah.
impact the teachers, it would be great to have you here.
Yeah.
So she wants to come to those meetings.
Yeah. I did. The only, I had a question on one of the highlighted sections
Mhm.
here on page 5 about the online credit.
Yes, and I made that in green
Okay.
because the
I had
state
it
is supposed to
yellow.
be coming through with their guidelines for online learning. So
Okay.
we haven't received that yet, but allegedly it's going to be hot off the press sometime soon.
Okay.
So
My
Those-
question was about ECE classes at
Mhm.
UConn. If they go online, are kids still gonna get their ECE? Like, if they're signing up and they're taking an ECE class there, and the week before, they think they're walking over there to take their class, and then the week before it goes online.
That's not ECE though, right? That's a university class. Because isn't
Oh, that's true, it'd be,
ECE taught-
right, but they would get credit.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's not
they,
easy.
for their,
Right,
but
right.
credit towards graduate, like, they do get some credit here.
yes,
Right,
for ECE.
Right,
yeah.
but it's,
So,
but-
yes,
because
it's
if
not
an
technically
class,
ECE.
it's our teachers, right?
Right,
But if it's a
Correct.
UConn course that they are
Right.
physically there for, yeah,
Right.
that's
But then do they get the credit
here.
here for graduation if it's online?
Right.
That was just, they
Oh, so
should.
they should, I mean,
Right.
whatever
I just
format, that would be, I'm just speaking off the cuff.
Yeah.
But, whatever format that university class is following.
Right.
I would assume that there are some kids who are opting to take some online classes
Okay.
as it is, just
Okay.
because
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
so
some of
much
them
of that
too. Yeah.
blended type of community.
Okay.
This can wait till next time.
Okay.
But, the grad requirements are going to be a priority. And the online piece, we're going to probably have to have quite a few conversations about once we get those guidelines from the
Yeah, 'cause I
state.
saw that date of 2022 and 2023, and it kind of scared me a little
For
bit.
graduation requirements, but it's a bit, I mean,
No, it'd be
For
online.
the
Oh,
online.
the online.
Being
Yeah,
online.
the grad requirements are for class of 2025.
Oh, I thought it was 23. Is it in our current student?
I think we changed those already.
I think we did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't
So there's
go up.
new ones for 25?
This, well, the update to them
Oh,
that Lou's been working on is for implementation for the class of 2025.
Oh, the class.
For 2023, it's only updated for the GPA. Remember, it went to the 4.0 scale.
Yep.
And then, was it half a credit or change, right? Did it go up?
it went up to
For health?
25
25
credits, right?
credits.
Yeah, we went up.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, but
Yeah.
so the world language requirement, all of that had to already be in place for the current.
Right,
That's already in place.
right. But that was the last change that we did.
Yeah. Yeah. So we need that meeting in November.
Yes.
Can we meet that on Monday? Can we pick that date on Monday?
Like pick a Monday date.
No, can we pick the date when we're here on Monday?
Oh, sure.
I don't have my November soccer schedule.
Yeah.
I mean, I do
Oh,
at
I
home.
remember when my life was run by soccer. I miss it. Soccer and baseball.
Okay, so are we good? Want to come off live stream?
Yeah, we just need to, yeah, we just need a motion
I
to,
move we post the meeting.
Second. Meeting adjourned at 7:32.